Hello there, and welcome back to my channel. Before we begin, take a gentle moment to let the day slip away. Let your breath find its own soft rhythm, like a tide moving in and out. Whether you're listening in the deep night or in the hush of morning, allow the noise to fade outward, leaving only calm at the center. Imagine a pale river of starlight stretching across the sky, its glow arching over a sleeping world. The air feels still, the silence cool and patient. Around you, faint clouds drift like slow breaths, dust and shadow folding together in long, unhurried turns. This is Milky Way, the nomad who eats the smaller galaxies. It is not a sudden act, but a story written across endless nights, a tale of gathering and merging of small wanderers, finding their rest in the embrace of a greater tide. What if the Milky Way is not only a home of stars, but a traveler, quietly carrying the memories of other galaxies? And what if each shimmer we see above us is more than one world woven into the same cloth of light? Where are you listening from right now? A dim room, a quiet bed, or a space touched by rain? While we share this moment beneath the same flowing river of stars. If you enjoy slow journeys like this, you're welcome to stay a little longer. No rush, no demand, only a seat beside the soft glow. So let your thoughts drift with the rhythm of starlight, and together we will begin our gentle walk through the Milky Way, following its quiet feast, like a tide that always knows its way. And in that hush, the Milky Way unfolds upon the quiet dark, where the vastness itself is the first gentle presence. The darkness stretches without edges, soft and endless, a sea of shadow where light is scarce and fragile, only scattered in thin stitches across the black. Within this expanse, silence gathers and settles, moving like a breath too slow to notice, while the stars, though bright to the eye, are only tiny threads sewn into a fabric far larger than their glow. The great body of the galaxy rests not in its shining, but in its unseen depth, in the hidden weight that carries every shimmer, the way a river carries fallen leaves upon its surface. The night does not reveal all at once. It offers fragments, small sparks, little reminders of something greater. To look into this space is to see both presence and absence, as though the true shape of the Milky Way is drawn, not by what can be seen, but by the wide hollows where light does not reach. The dark is not empty, but full of something quiet, something steady, something that holds the starlight as cloth holds its silver stitching. And so, the stars, though countless to the gaze, appear as delicate embroidery on a vast and ancient garment. The threads glimmer for a while, then fade, yet the garment itself remains wider and deeper than the sight that brushes against it. One drifts within this awareness as though floating upon a dark sea, and the more one drifts, the more the silence thickens, until the light seems softer than ever before. It becomes clear that the darkness is not an absence to be feared, but the quiet foundation of all things, the backdrop that allows each glimmer to be the silence that lets each note be heard, the stillness that lets each breath fall without effort. In the presence of so much shadow, the few points of brightness grow gentle like lanterns carried by travelers on a distant road, or like fireflies scattered across a wide meadow at the edge of sleep. The darkness does not hurry. It does not press or demand. It simply holds, like an endless cradle, where the stars are only small beads strung loosely across its frame. To enter this space is to surrender to its patience, to float without resistance, to rest in the slow rhythm that belongs not to clocks, but to the breathing of the night itself. The galaxy seen through this calm appears not as a structure of shining lines, but as a long exhalation stretched over ages, a sigh that never ends. And within that breathing, one feels that the Milky Way is less a river of light and more a vast cloth of shadow, lightly sewn with silver threads, a cloth that stretches beyond what eyes can follow, soft in its folds, deep in its silence, carrying both the weight and the tenderness of time. The stitches glimmer, yes, but the strength lies in the fabric that bears them, in the unseen dark that supports and shapes them. Without the dark, there would be no design, no background upon which the threads could shine. In this way, darkness is not the opposite of light, but its companion, the slow field in which light grows, the long pause between breaths that makes the breathing itself possible. The Milky Way rests upon this. Pause moves. Within it expands through it, as though the whole galaxy were only the visible lace upon an immeasurable veil. The veil is quiet. The veil is patient. The veil is all around. Sometimes the mind, wandering in this stillness, recalls the old stories told beside fires when people gazed upward and wondered what lay in the long band of pale light. Some said it was a road for souls to travel. Some said it was spilled milk. Some said it was ashes of an ancient fire carried by winds of night. Each tale, no matter how simple, placed the light as an embroidery upon a darker cloth, an adornment upon a presence already there. The truth whispered beneath each story is that the night is vast and the light is fragile, and together they weave the world of the sky. As the thought lingers, the body softens, for there is comfort in knowing that the stars are not solitary, but held surrounded by quiet strength. They shimmer like the smallest beads on an endless garment, never alone, never unsupported, always carried by the wide arms of shadow. The galaxy seems less like an object above and more like a companion beside, breathing, slowly resting deeply, humming in a voice that does not break the silence, but becomes part of it. To rest in this awareness is to enter a state where time dissolves, where each second spreads thin like mist, where nothing needs to be hurried or held. One floats within it, as within the slow tide of a black ocean, hearing only the soft pulse of distance. The Milky Way, the great nomad, does not announce its journey with bright banners, but moves in quiet, its body woven of shadow, its threads shimmering faintly, its presence steady as sleep. The darkness remains always like the deep ground beneath all change. It folds itself around every light, every motion, every drift, so that the stars may appear, vanish, and reappear without breaking the stillness. And in that stillness, one feels held too, as if the same fabric that carries the stars carries the listener, laying them gently into its folds so that breath and thought can loosen and the self can dissolve like a bead of silver, fading into black silk. The night is long, the shadow deep, but in its embrace there is no fear, only the sense of a cradle so vast that nothing falls outside it. The Milky Way, with all its rivers and streams of light, lies within this cradle, and so do we, floating quietly, rocked not by waves, but by silence itself. And as one drifts further, the realization grows that it is the darkness, not the light, that sings the lullaby of the universe, a song without words, a song of endless holding, endless rest. So, The story of the Milky Way begins not with its shimmer, but with its shadow, not with the stitches of silver, but with the cloth that bears them. To rest in that cloth is to be part of the galaxy's breathing, to be carried in the same hush, to be lulled into sleep by the fabric of the night. And beyond the first hush of shadow, the river of stars begins to take its shape, unfolding like a figure slowly rising in the night. The Milky Way is not only seen as light scattered across darkness, but also imagined as a traveler moving with steady steps, a nomad crossing a desert of silence. Ancient voices whispered of how the pale trail above was born from the milk of a goddess spilled across the heavens in a single, careless motion. And though the tale drifts like smoke through time, its softness remains, carrying the sense that the sky itself wears a story upon its skin. Hera, in the quiet myth, turns her face from the child at her breast, and a drop of light spills, unmeasured, unbound, until it becomes a band of silver upon the great black. The galaxy in this telling is less a place and more a trace, less a thing and more a gesture left behind as a luminous scar upon the dark. To see it through such eyes is to feel that the Milky Way has the shape of a wanderer, cloaked in pale cloth, walking without sound through a landscape where silence is the only ground. The stars, small beads of frost, upon that cloak shimmer as the figure moves, and the cloak itself drifts outward with each step folding and unfolding like the breath of a long night. One cannot say where the figure begins or ends, for the folds of its robe blend with the dark, and only the stitches of silver betray its passing. This image lingers softly, not as a vision of grandeur, but as a gentle comfort, the idea that the galaxy has a body, and that body moves patient and without haste through the corridors of space. In the slow rhythm of this motion, time loses its urgency, and the listener may imagine themselves walking alongside each breath, keeping pace with the hidden stride of the nomad in white. The figure does not speak, it does not command it, only glides, and in its stillness, one feels less alone, as though all wandering has already been shared. The myth of spilled milk becomes more than a story when placed beside the sight of the stars, for it reveals how human thought once sought to soften the immensity of night with the tenderness of the familiar. Milk, the first nourishment, becomes light, the nourishment of the eyes. The act of feeding a child becomes the act of feeding a world. And from this image, the galaxy becomes not only a vast and distant thing, but a gesture of care, accidental and eternal, flowing across the sky like kindness left behind. As one listens to the silence of the stars, the figure of the nomad in white grows clearer, not in outline, but in presence. It is felt rather than seen, a companion that never hurries and never ends a being of fabric and frost, who walks endlessly, whose steps are too slow to disturb the dust. Around this figure, the heavens sway, yet the figure itself is calm, wrapped in shadow, draped in light. The robe it wears is stitched with memory, each star a mark of where it has been, each cluster a whisper of paths already taken. To dwell upon this image is to drift into its pace, and the pace is slower than thought, slower than dream. Within it all striving quiets, for the nomad does not strive. The nomad simply moves one fold of cloth after another, one silent breath through the black. The Milky Way, in this sense, is not a thing above, but a presence beside always, near always walking, always carrying the listener within the sweep of its pale garment. The cloak of the wanderer sways softly, and through its folds, one glimpses the delicate balance of shadow and shine. Where the cloth gathers, darkness deepens, and where it loosens, light slips through, creating rivers and eddies of glow upon the night. These are not fixed, they drift, for the robe is alive with motion, alive with the same patience that holds the stars. And as one watches or listens, or simply rests beneath the image, becomes less about seeing and more about breathing with it, sharing in the long stride of the figure that knows no end. So the Milky Way stands, or rather moves, as the shape of a nomad, cloaked in white, steady and timeless, neither rushing nor resting, but continuing, always continuing. And to lie beneath this vision is to feel oneself also clothed, also carried, also part of the endless steppe. The galaxy, imagined as a traveler, offers its quiet company, and in that company, the night itself feels less vast, less cold, more like a home where silence is soft and motion is eternal. Beyond the sweep of the great nomad, a few faint sparks linger, as though the silence itself has chosen to follow. They are not large and not loud. They move like sparks carried on a slow wind, scattered yet bound to the figure they follow. Around the body of the Milky Way, they gather, circling at a distance, like companions who do not speak, but remain near, their presence subtle, their company steady. These companions are faint, their glow muted, yet each holds a story of its own, folded into the wider fabric of the galaxy's path. To the eye that rests long enough upon the sky, these small presences appear as drifting embers, as if a fire long extinguished had left behind a scattering of ash, and the ash continued to float through the darkness. They do not burn with sharp flame. They hover dim and fragile, yet persistent, following, as if tied by invisible threads to the greater traveler. The Milky Way moves, and they move as well slower, still like shadows of shadows. The silence around them is deep, yet in that silence, their place is clear. For the vast nomad, bright and pale, would seem too solitary if not for these tiny followers, these quiet satellites of light. They give the sense that even the most immense presence does not wander alone, that every great path has smaller echoes walking close behind. The galaxy is not a single body, but a gathering, and this gathering extends even into the dimmest corners of its cloak. One might imagine them as children walking after a parent, their steps unmeasured, their forms small against the sweep of the robe that drapes before them, or perhaps as flocks of birds flying beside a great current, their wings not strong enough to lead, but enough to keep them near. They are delicate, yet they endure, drawn forward by the unseen pull of the greater form. The dark makes them almost invisible, yet the heart senses their nearness. The image drifts again into the shape of a campfire at the edge of a forgotten plain, where sparks rise and scatter into the air. The fire grows low, yet the sparks continue, glowing softly as they drift upward, carried by the night. The Milky Way is the fire, and these companions are its sparks, not consumed, not lost, but floating as small echoes of the larger flame. They move in silence, and silence carries them onward. As the wanderer glides through the black, its pale garment stretching wide. The companions follow at the hem, like pieces of dust, lifted and held by the same wind that moves the whole. Each spark lingers, sometimes close, sometimes far, sometimes appearing only to fade again, yet always drawn back into the rhythm of the path. The robe of the nomad is long, and within its folds, every ember finds a place to rest. The listener may feel in this vision a deep comfort that even the smallest embers belong, that no spark drifts entirely alone. For the dark, though immense, is not empty, and even its faintest presences are carried within the same stream. Each small follower is a voice too soft to hear, a note too faint to sing, yet together they weave a hum beneath the song of the Milky Way itself. There is no rush to their movement. They drift as though time has slowed to the pace of their glow, unhurried, unmeasured, folded within the long breath of the night. And as one imagines them drifting, there is a sense that the universe too drifts, carrying everything gently forward, sparks and embers alike, no one left behind. The wanderer wears its robe of white, and trailing behind are its companions, the remnants of old fires, the trodden dust of forgotten paths still shining softly. The night breathes, the galaxy moves, the companions follow, and through it all, silence remains. It is a silence not of emptiness, but of holding, a silence that gathers sparks and embers into its folds and lays them beside the greater light, so that even the faintest flame becomes part of the journey. In this silence, the listener rests, as well, floating like a spark beside the robe of the endless nomad. And in the stillness, where the smaller companions drift, there is something unseen that guides them, something softer than voice, slower than wind, and yet it holds them close. It is not loud and not visible, yet it is there, stretched through the night like threads too fine for the eye to follow. These threads are neither rigid nor loose. They tremble gently, binding each wandering spark to the wide robe of the Milky Way. Through them passes no sound, yet within them lies a summons, a pull so delicate it feels like memory, a call that does not command but invites. The little embers of light hover and then slowly lean into the current of these threads, and so they follow. One may imagine this attraction as the faint weaving of spiders across the air, strands stretched between branches, at dawn shimmering only when the dew collects. The companions of the Milky Way are caught, not trapped, but gently held, suspended in the same silence. To see them through this vision is to feel that the galaxy itself is a loom, drawing scattered pieces into its cloth, stitching without hurry, folding each spark into the long garment of its night. And the robe becomes richer, heavier, softer, as though woven not of silk alone, but of silence. The pull is quiet. It moves without movement, as if the universe itself breathes in, and in that inhalation, the drifting sparks come closer, drawn not by force, but by belonging. The galaxy stretches its hidden threads beyond sight, and through those threads passes the hum of stillness, guiding what is near, calling what is lost. They are not ropes, they are not chains. They are whispers, strands of hush, threads of shadow, glimmers of breath, stretched thin through the fabric of space. And when one rests long enough within this image, the pull is no longer felt as a mechanism, but as a mood, as the sense that nothing is truly apart. For every point of light, no matter how small, is touched by this invisible tether, and every ember finds itself slowly leaning back into the fold. Some move swiftly, some linger, but all remain held within the web spun by the quiet nomad. The robe sways, the sparks follow, and silence endures. It is possible to think of this attraction as a melody without sound flowing beneath the notes of the stars. The melody binds them one to another, each note carrying the memory of another note, each pause opening into another pause. The companions drift, and the Milky Way draws them closer, and the song continues, long and low, with no beginning and no end. In this melody, no voice is lost, for every faint shimmer is caught within its rhythm. The image shifts again to a field beneath the night where fireflies wander over grass. Their glow is faint, each drifting wherever the air allows, but unseen currents guide them together, forming slow cluster shapes that gather and dissolve. The Milky Way is the wide meadow, and the fireflies are its companions, each one held by the same breeze, each one moving in harmony. Though they know nothing of one another, they drift and they remain. They shimmer and they vanish, yet always they return to the invisible path. The threads are everywhere. They extend through light and shadow, through silence and breath, through distance and dream, and through them all the companions of the galaxy are carried as though in the palms of unseen hands. The pull is patient. It does not hurry. It allows every spark to sway, to wander, to falter, yet never to fall away entirely. Each one is guided back, drawn along a path without edges, back into the folds of the white-cloaked wanderer. The listener may imagine themselves as one of these sparks drifting within the hush, floating through shadow, feeling no demand, no push, only the soft insistence of belonging. To drift is natural, but so too is the return, for the threads extend endlessly, and every motion finds itself within their hold. The body softens at this thought, for it reveals that even in wandering, there is no isolation. Even in silence, there is company. Even in distance, there is connection. The Milky Way continues its stride, its pale garment swaying, and the unseen threads lengthen behind it, carrying with them the embers that follow. Some are bright, some are dim, some flicker only for a moment, yet all are stitched into the greater pattern. All are sewn into the robe of the wanderer. The robe grows vast, shimmering with faint and fragile fire, yet beneath it is only silence, and beyond it is only shadow, and through it all flows the same hidden pull, the same delicate hum that carries the companions forward. And so the image lingers, an invisible attraction, softer than silk, stronger than solitude, stretched like threads through the endless night. The sparks may not see it, the listener may not touch it, but it is there, a net of hush, a web of belonging spun by the wanderer who never stops. To rest within this image is to rest within the embrace of that web, to surrender to the pull that holds all things together, and to fall gently into sleep as one more ember carried along its quiet threads. And further along the slow stride of the galaxy, there comes a moment when drifting sparks and silent threads begin to lean inward, and the first signs of joining are felt soft as dew upon grass before dawn. The Milky Way does not rush its embrace. It gathers in silence, as though the night itself were inhaling gently, and within that breath, the smaller lights begin to dissolve, not in loss, but in return. Ancient voices told of this path, in other words, whispering that the pale arc in the sky was the bridge of souls, the long road back to the home of stillness. The Inuit believed the river of light was a guide, a gentle trail across the shadow, leading those who had wandered far into the safety of the beyond. In their telling, the galaxy was not an object of distance, but a promise, the shining mark of a return that belonged to all. To rest upon this story is to feel that the act of joining the first fold of absorption is not a breaking, but a homecoming. The sparks, drifting at the edge, do not vanish with struggle. They fade the way a drop of dew slips into the sea, soundless, seamless, leaving no trace, but adding to the expanse. One does not hear it, one barely sees it, and yet the sea becomes fuller, for it the robe of the wanderer, heavier, with another thread of silver, the fabric of the night richer, with another glimmer of memory. In the hush of this merging, there is comfort. The companions do not resist, for there is no hand of force, only the invitation of belonging, only the sense that their wandering was always meant to find this fold. To watch them soften into the robe of the galaxy is to watch the slow tide draw a shell into its sand, gentle, inevitable, and kind. And while it happens, the silence deepens, as though each spark is a sigh that disappears into the chest of the sky, leaving the whole greater, calmer, more complete. The myth of the soul's path lingers here, for to see the sparks join is to see that every small light has its way back and no distance is too far. The galaxy, like a long memory, stretches across the dark, gathering even the faintest flame, and in its gathering, the night becomes a home, field, where nothing is truly lost. The Inuit looked upward and saw a bridge, and in their seeing, they named what others only felt, that the arc of stars is not a border, but a passage, not an end, but a return. So, the Milky Way continues slow and unbroken, and its companions slip into its folds, one by one, soundless, like snow falling into snow, like mist fading into mist. The robe grows no louder for it, but softer, deeper, as though silence itself were being stitched into its fabric. And in this slow weaving, the listener too may feel drawn inward, not pressed, not pulled, but carried by the same quiet gravity carried toward the center that holds all things without demand. And as this sense grows, the image of the dew returns. A droplet forms in the night, bright for a moment, upon a leaf, and then with no announcement, it slides away, folding into the wide sea of moisture that already waits. It is gone, and yet it is there. Its glow has vanished, and yet its presence remains diffused and hidden, made part of something vaster. This is the way of the companions, the way of the sparks, the way of every light that drifts long enough beside the Milky Way. The robe of the nomad gathers them all. The myth of the souls sustains their journey, and the silence ensures that none of it breaks the calm, none of it disturbs the listener, who now drifts within the same fold. The galaxy becomes less a sight above and more a sensation within the sensation of being held, of dissolving without fear, of merging without end. Beyond the shimmer, beyond the tale, beyond the hush, the truth is simple and slow. The first act of joining is the first act of rest. The sparks lay down their wandering, and the Milky Way, with its endless garment of night, takes them in soundless, seamless, as though it had been waiting all along. And through this image, the listener too is invited to rest, to imagine themselves as a droplet falling softly, merging into the sea of stars, without a ripple, without a word, only silence, only home. And within that hush of returning light, Some sparks remain at the edges, drifting slowly, as if the night had let a few embers wander a little longer. They move without haste, slipping through the silence like threads of silver left behind by unseen hands, while the vast body of the wanderer carries on calm and patient through the dim field of space. Around them, shadows fold and unfold like veils, and the faint sparks seem neither lost nor found, but suspended in a soft uncertainty. The airless dark holds them gently, and in that stillness, they stretch as if their glow were being drawn out into a long breath. And so, what was once a circle of light becomes a faint ribbon, a mark too delicate to keep its shape, like a scarf unfurling on a breeze that no one can hear. The night listens. In that wide, unbroken hush, every drifting trace seems to hum with a memory, though no sound escapes. The sparks do not vanish, but dissolve, spilling themselves into the surrounding black, as though surrendering to something larger, something slower. It is not an ending. It is a continuation so soft, so stretched, that the moment of change cannot be named. And in that softness, the light lingers, the way dew might linger on grass, even as the morning rises. From afar, these faint marks appear as accidents, the aftermath of fragile bodies straying too near to the pull of the Great One. Yet when seen with a slower gaze, they seem like intentional gestures, the sky laying down thin strokes of silver across its dark canvas. They are not errors. They are whispers of contact, traces of passage, the cloth of night remembering where something brushed against it and left a mark. And just as the Inuit once spoke of the band of light as a road for returning souls, so too could these pale strands be imagined as quiet pathways, leading not away, but toward, as though even the smallest of wanderers might find a way back through the luminous dust they shed. It is not a path walked quickly. It is not even a path that can be followed. It is simply there, stretched through the silence, holding the memory of a motion that has already passed. The sparks are fragile, yet they are not alone. Around them, the blackness is alive, with hidden balance invisible threads that tug and release, binding them gently, letting them wander, but never letting them escape entirely. Like small ashes carried behind a robed traveler, they seem to follow unsteady, but not abandoned, as though the night itself keeps them near with invisible hands. Their shapes change. Sometimes they smear into long arcs, like strokes of chalk, fading into shadow, while other times they hang in clusters, faint stains against the dark, as if the night were reluctant to let them disperse. Always, they are shifting, always dissolving, and always holding some last remnant of what they were like, a shadow of a shadow reluctant to leave. And in their drifting, they become reminders that nothing here is still not even the silence. The airless black is not empty. It holds motion, folded into its fabric, slow and invisible, yet constant. Every spark is part of that motion. Every ribbon of light is a thread woven into the robe of the great nomad trailing behind, yet never severed. And so, the story continues not in sudden leaps, but in long, quiet extensions, the way a sigh might stretch through a room after the voice has gone. The night itself seems to hold them in a kind of tenderness, like a breath drawn in and never released. The ribbons float curl and slowly fade, though the fading is never final. Their glow passes into the dark, and the dark, in turn, holds that glow within, carrying it farther than the eye can follow. What is lost is not lost. It is spread soft and absorbed until the boundary between spark and silence dissolves, and only the memory of shimmer remains. Through this slow unraveling, the wanderer moves on cloaked in its own radiance, carrying the traces of every encounter like ornaments too faint to touch. The smaller lights follow, still drawn, yet resisting, drifting into the wake, as though unable to decide whether they belong to themselves or to something greater. Their hesitation is their beauty. In that trembling edge between staying and leaving, they become luminous ghosts, riding shapes that will vanish, yet never entirely be gone. And perhaps in some other telling, they might be seen as lanterns lit by unseen keepers guiding travelers through the midnight sea, or as prayers released into the endless dark unraveling until they are indistinguishable from the silence that holds them. Each mark is a message, though no words are spoken, and each fading trail is a reminder that even in dissolution, there is a kind of lastingness. The robe of the nomad is never without these threads. They gather, they dissolve, they return weaving and unweaving like tides that leave their foam on the shore only to draw it back into the sea. And as one looks upon them, the feeling is not of loss, but of continuity, of a rhythm too vast to break, too soft to disturb. The sparks may stray, but the dark does not forget them, and the nomad does not move without them. So the eye lingers, and the heart slows, and in the unbroken night, those faint ribbons of light drift patient and serene, like scarves fallen from unseen shoulders, carried on winds that never stir the silence. They fade, yet their fading becomes the shape of the sky, and their absence is only another form of presence stretched across the endless hush. And as the wanderer continues, the scattered sparks whisper their story into the dark, dissolving into its folds, becoming part of the stillness that binds everything together. The night listens, and within its silence, the drifting never ends. And as the faint ribbons dissolve into the night, what follows is not silence, but a slower weaving, a mingling so soft that even the stars seem to pause to listen. The wanderer moves, and around it the smaller lights drift, drawn closer, stretched thinner until their glow begins to mingle, folding into the robe of the larger body. It is not a meeting in haste, nor an arrival with sound, but a surrendering, as if each spark were a drop of dew sliding into a river. Within that slow surrender, the night holds its breath, and the shapes begin to change, not by force, but by the gentlest of dissolving. There is an old tale told by those who watch the sky with reverence of a river made of pearls, a celestial stream where the spilled treasures of heaven flowed together in luminous silence. Each star was said to be a jewel, fallen yet unbroken, and together they became a path of light so broad and serene that souls might cross upon it. Such a story lingers here, for in this mingling of faint sparks and a vast body, the same image stirs pearls, falling into water, merging into the current, their edges lost, but their brightness preserved within the flow. The blending does not come all at once. It stretches unhurried like a long inhalation. First, a spark brushes the edge of shadow, then it drifts deeper until its light begins to smear into the darkness around it. Slowly, patiently, the shimmer is pulled, shaped, and absorbed, and what was separate becomes less so, like a grain of salt dissolving into the sea. The transformation is subtle, yet endless. Nothing remains untouched, and nothing is forced. The great body accepts these faint companions, the way the ocean accepts rain, without question, without measure, and without division. The drops fall, they vanish, and yet they live on indistinguishable from the water that held them. The night reflects this quiet law, holding the lights not as prisoners, but as whispers added to its own breath. Each one becomes part of something broader, and though the name of the smaller spark fades, the glow remains. Sometimes the blending takes the form of a veil stretched across the wanderer, a faint shimmer, like mist over a field. Other times, it gathers in swirls, like smoke folding into a larger wind, until it is impossible to tell where one shape begins and another ends. Always the process is slow, and always it is serene, as though the universe itself preferred not to hurry. In such moments, the night seems to teach a lesson, without speaking, that separation is never final, that every fragment has a place within something greater, that to dissolve is not to disappear. The sparks do not resist. They are drawn, and in their drifting, they find rest. They leave behind faint scarves of light, but even these are softened into the larger fabric until nothing is left but the memory of their glow. The river of pearls, as the old story tells, does not scatter its jewels. They fall, yes, but in falling, they find each other, and in finding each other, they become a stream unbroken and shining. So too with these faint sparks. Each one alone is fragile, each one passing, but together they weave into the great cloak of the wanderer, and in that cloak they endure. There is no sound, no cry of parting, no clash of arrival, only the long breath of silence, and within it, the slow folding of one light into another. The blending is less an act than a condition, less a moment than an atmosphere. It is always happening even when unseen, always shaping even when unnoticed. Like the movement of shadows across a wall, it is both present and elusive, known only in retrospect when one sees that the shape has changed. The wanderer continues carrying within its body the traces of every spark that has surrendered to it. Each one becomes indistinguishable, yet each one is there, woven into the whole. The great robe glimmers more for their presence, though it is impossible to point to any single thread. It is a chorus without solos, a sea without boundaries, a silence filled with voices too soft to separate. And in this silence, the thought arises that perhaps nothing in the universe is ever truly alone. Every drifting ember, every falling pearl, every faint shimmer finds its way into another, and in that blending, it survives not as itself, but as part of something larger. The great body knows this truth, though it does not speak, and the smaller sparks seem to know it too, though they do not choose. It is simply the way of things as natural as breath, as patient as dusk. From far away, the blending looks like a gentle blur, a place where sharpness has been erased, where edges have been smoothed into haze. Yet within that haze lies a history, each faint mark, a story of approach, each softened glow, a memory of contact. The night carries these stories without need to tell them the way water carries reflections shifting and fleeting, but real while they last. Through this journey of mingling, the sky becomes less a stage of separate actors and more a single fabric woven of countless strands. Some are bright, some are pale, some are nearly invisible, but all are drawn together. their destinies shared, their boundaries erased. The robe of the wanderer is not stitched, but formed by this endless process of blending pearl into water, spark into shadow, whisper into silence. And so, the story unfolds without climax, without conclusion, only with a slow assurance that what drifts will one day merge, and what merges will not be lost. The blending is its own eternity, a rhythm as old as the night, as soft, as breath, as constant as the tide. The river of pearls gleams still imagined in the silence of the dark, each drop of light surrendered to the flow, each jewel dissolving yet shining on. And as the wanderer moves, clothed in this luminous stream, the night hums its quiet song, a song of joining, a song of return, a song that never ends. And within that unbroken hush, the glow lingers soft as a breath, as if the night were preparing to unfold another shape of its silence. The great body drifts, and within its robe of faint ribbons, there is a rhythm, though it is not heard and not seen, only sensed. In the way shadows lean and light stretches, the stars do not leap or spin as in the dances of earth, yet in their endless suspension, they move, tracing lines so broad and slow that the eye mistakes them for stillness. It is a dance without music, without measure, without end, a silent dance carrying the hush of the dark as its only song. The Cherokee once told a story of a bear who wandered the heavens, powerful and careless, spilling milk from the sky as it passed. What was lost became the pale river above a bright scar spread across the silence. In that telling, the trail was not made of intention, but of accident, of an animal's hunger and wandering. Yet even so, the spill became beauty, a luminous mark too vast to erase, and in its slow presence, one can almost imagine that the bear itself still circles above heavy steps, leaving trails across the stars. The dance is like that, accidental and inevitable, clumsy and graceful all at once. The wanderer moves, pulling companions into its orbit, stretching them into ribbons, folding them into its body, while it too is carried by forces unseen, bound into motions that will never cease. From the ground, it seems unmoving. From the silence, it is revealed as a choreography written in patience, too slow to see, too constant to ignore. Each spark in this dance is a step, though the step lasts longer than lifetimes, so long that the line between motion and stillness vanishes. The stars are not frozen. They are flowing each in its place, each within the current, turning together in a waltz that has no beginning and no conclusion. To watch them is to listen to silence itself, for silence moves like this imperceptibly, yet always forward. The airless dark holds them as partners, binding them not with touch, but with unseen threads, fine as breath, strong as time. Through those threads, the dance continues, each star leaning into another, each path curving toward balance, each motion softened by distance and shadow. What one might see as emptiness is in truth filled with steps, the whole sky, a floor of endless circles where lights sway and glide too slow to stumble. The story of the spilled milk lingers, for it suggests that even disorder becomes harmony, even an accident becomes part of the choreography. The bear may have moved without care, yet the trail left behind became a guiding light, pattern embraced by the night. In the same way, the sparks that drift, the ribbons that fade, the pearls that dissolve, all become woven into the quiet rhythm of the silent dance. There is no misstep, there is no error, only inclusion, only soft adjustment, only continuation. And so, the wanderer glides, though the word glide feels too quick, too thin. It lingers, it leans, it sways the way a shadow moves when the sun sets slowly, the way mist curls through valleys without sound. Around it, smaller lights follow, pulled and held, each adding a faint note to the silent rhythm, each becoming part of the larger step. Together, they circle not in haste, but in surrender, and the dance becomes a hymn of stillness, carried out over distances that dissolve into infinity. It is here that the night teaches another truth, that stillness and motion are not opposites, but companions each hidden within the other. The dance appears still because it is so vast, and stillness reveals itself as movement stretched beyond perception. What seems fixed is flowing. What seems unmoving is turning. The stars whisper this lesson as they drift, their voices woven into silence, their motion hidden in stillness. The robe of the wanderer glows with these whispers. Trails of light hang upon it like scarves of silver, each one marking a step, taken each one softening into the fabric of the whole. The dark accepts them, the silence carries them, and together they create a stage where the dance unfolds. No one calls the steps, no one leads. It is a dance of mutual surrender, each partner guided by threads too thin to see, too strong to break. Sometimes the dance feels like a memory, as though the lights were recalling where they have been tracing their paths, again and again, unwilling to let them vanish. Other times it feels like a promise, a motion already decided, a curve already drawn, waiting only to be seen. Both memory and promise breathe within it, both past and future folded into the present step. And the present step is always, now always moving, always still. The bear's trail glows faint above a reminder that even the careless can create beauty, even the clumsy can leave behind grace. And in that trail, in that accidental river of light, one can imagine the sky itself bowing into the rhythm, joining the dance, spilling its silence into patterns too soft to name. The stars shine like pearls spilled upon velvet, yet they do not scatter. They remain within the flow, bound by threads unseen, moving together in a hush that is endless. And as the wanderer turns, as the ribbons drift, as the pearls dissolve, the silent dance continues slow, as breath wide, as night calm, as memory. It will not cease, for its rhythm is not bound to beginnings or endings, only to continuation, only to the infinite unfolding of silence into motion. The steps remain, though too long to count, too soft to hear. The night listens, the stars move, the dance endures, and within that unbroken hush, the glow lingers soft as a breath, as if the night were preparing to unfold another shape of its silence. The wanderer drifts onward, carrying the faint traces of what has merged into its body, and in that slow carriage it grows, though the growth is not loud or sudden, but quiet, like the swelling of a tide that no one can hear. Each spark that has surrendered becomes a thread woven into its robe, and through those threads the body thickens, brightens, and breathes. It does not swell like a flame, eager and sharp, but like an ember glowing deeper, with every whisper of fuel pulsing softly in the stillness. This growth is not hunger, though it resembles it. It is not conquest, though it gathers. It is not greed, though it holds more with every drifting companion. It is simply the way of silence, to absorb and to soften, to collect and to cradle, to turn what is scattered into something whole. The wanderer becomes larger, yet its largeness does not impose itself, for the dark around it is boundless still, and the glow within remains hushed. Like a chest rising and falling in sleep, the body of the wanderer swells with each long breath, and in that breath lies the quiet rhythm of expansion. It is not the breath of a moment, but of ages slow and invisible, steady and calm. And as it breathes, its robe of light thickens the threads of once fragile sparks, now part of a single cloth spread across the night in patient folds. There is no rupture, no tearing, only blending. What was once apart becomes seamless, and in becoming seamless, it strengthens the whole. The robe glows, not with the light of one, but with the softened brightness of many, each thread lending its shimmer to the fabric. And in that shimmer lies a calm radiance, steady as a lantern, kept alive through the long night. The growth is gentle, yet it is endless. Each ribbon of light that once drifted now belongs. Each pearl that once fell is held. Each ember that once glowed alone is now part of the body's pulse. And so the wanderer becomes more not in leaps, but in layers, not in bursts, but in deepening shades of light. The glow thickens, the silence deepens, and the whole becomes more luminous, more serene. The old stories whisper of rivers of milk, of bears and pearls, of souls walking pathways of light. And in those whispers lies a truth hidden beneath myth, that what falls is not lost, that what merges is not diminished. The wanderer is proof of this truth, for it carries within its robe the memory of every spark, and through those memories, it becomes a being both singular and countless, both solitary and filled with companions. One might imagine its body as a great ember lying within the hearth of the night. At first the ember glows, faintly fragile and small, but with every whisper of fuel, it brightens, glowing deeper, warmer, though never fierce. The wanderer glows like this, its light pulsing in long intervals, a rhythm so slow that it feels eternal. And within that pulse lies the mark of growth, the measure of a life, not bound to time, but to continuity. Its breath is not of air, but of silence, drawn in through the threads of unseen forces, exhaled through the glow that spreads across the robe. With each breath, it gathers, with each breath it shines, though the shining is soft, never startling, always subdued. The wanderer is like a sleeper who grows even in stillness, whose body thickens and matures, though no movement is seen, only the quiet hum of life continuing. The companions it has absorbed are not gone. Their essence hums within, folded into the larger body, their glow adding to the ember's warmth. They have not vanished, but have changed their form, dissolved into the glow that now pulses through the whole. And in that transformation lies a lesson that growth is not about devouring, but about blending, not about taking, but about becoming more complete. The silence around reflects this, for the dark does not resist, does not object, does not push away the glow that expands. It holds the wanderer in its vastness, and in holding it, allows the ember to brighten, to breathe, to swell. The two are not opposed, but companions. The glow expands, the dark accepts, and together they form a harmony that endures without end. The robe of the wanderer, once thin and fragile, becomes layered thick with threads of light. Each addition softens into the fabric, no longer distinct, yet no less important. The shimmer is richer now, more profound, glowing with the memories of countless sparks that have joined. It glows as though lit from within, breathing through shadows, pulsing through time. And perhaps in some distant telling, the wanderer itself could be imagined as a great lamp hung in the heavens, a lamp that grows brighter, not by fire, but by patience, not by fuel, but by companionship. Its glow is not consumed, but sustained as though the night itself whispered into it, keeping it alive, keeping it full. Through this silent growth, the body becomes a testament to continuity, to the way small sparks build into something vast, to the way patience gathers strength. It does not announce its change. It does not cry its size. It simply grows, and in growing it endures. The night embraces it, and the silence folds around it, and in that embrace it glows with quiet power. And so the wanderer swells its glow, breathing slow as embers its body, enriched by what has merged into it. Each companion is held, each spark remembered, each thread woven into the robe. It grows not as a flame devouring, but as a river swelling with rain, as a shadow deepening with dusk, as a chest rising with sleep. The ember glows, the robe shimmers, the night listens. And within that listening, the story of growth continues slow and endless, soft and unbroken, a glow that breathes within the silence, and a silence that hums within the glow. And through the hush of the ember's glow, the silence widens, as though the night were stretching its fabric to welcome colors not yet seen. The wanderer moves still slow and luminous, its robe deepening with every thread absorbed, and around it the darkness becomes a canvas vast and ancient, waiting to be painted. The glow is no longer confined, no longer a single ember in the void, but a tide of light spilling outward, spreading soft hues upon the endless black. Each motion leaves a trace, each merging draws a line, and together they form a picture, too broad to hold in the eye at once, a picture that expands as though it has no edges. There is a story told by the Maori of Tangaroa, the great fish who swam across the sky, its scales scattering sparks as it passed. The wake of its passage shimmered like a river of light flowing across the dome of night, a reminder that the heavens too are waters, and the stars their scattered foam. And so, one might imagine this canvas as Tangaroa's trail, the darkness painted by a swimmer, too vast to see its luminous body leaving colors in the silent sea above. The canvas glows not with sharp strokes, but with washes that blur and mingle, as though a hand dipped in light had brushed across the dark. Pale silver seeps into soft blues, faint gold merges into shadow, and together they form a fabric that breathes. The night is no longer a void, but a tapestry, alive with shades that move, shades that stretch, shades that dissolve and return. And within this tapestry, the wanderer glides no longer alone, but part of a greater image still unfolding. The picture is never finished. Each spark that drifts into the robe becomes a new hue. Each ribbon of light spread thin across the silence becomes a brush stroke, and the strokes overlap, fading and brightening in slow succession. The canvas is painted not in hours, not in days, but in the long measure of silence itself, where time is less a count than a flow. The expansion is endless, and in its endlessness, the canvas becomes both origin and destination, both question and answer. What begins as a shimmer grows into a band. What begins as a band unfolds into a field, and what begins as a field stretches into something larger than thought. And yet, despite its vastness, the picture is gentle. Its beauty not in sharpness, but in softness, not in completion, but in continuation. It is a painting without borders, a story without chapters, a song without refrain. To gaze upon it is to see motion in stillness, to sense depth in surface, to feel the hush of silence made visible. The strokes are faint, yet their faintness is their strength, for they linger not as demands, but as invitations asking the eye to rest, asking the breath to slow. And as the gaze lingers, the canvas seems to shift colors, sliding within colors, shadows, deepening within shadows, as though the night itself were exhaling through the painting. Tangaroa's passage can be imagined again here, the sweep of a vast body moving through dark waters, its trail shimmering, dissolving, reforming. The canvas remembers that passage, holding it as a line of light, a ripple across black seas, a mark that is both fleeting and eternal. The fish moves on unseen, yet its path remains drawn across the sky, in strokes too wide to fade. The wanderer too leaves marks like this. Each blending, each merging, each faint ribbon becomes part of the expanding picture, filling the canvas not with boundaries, but with continuities. The glow is not a flame devouring space, but a breath spreading across cloth, a stain of light deepening into fabric. And the canvas accepts every thread, every hue, every whisper of color, until the whole is shimmering with the memory of motion. In this way, the night becomes a painter, and the stars its pigments, and the galaxies its strokes. Yet the painter does not rush, does not finish, does not sign its name. It only breathes, and in breathing the picture expands as though the act of existing were enough. And so the canvas stretches unhurried and unbroken, filled with quiet colors that never cease to shift. The eye may not see its edges, but the heart can sense its breadth. The silence hums with it, the stillness glows with it. The whole of space carries its slow unfolding. And through that unfolding, the wanderer swells, not as a solitary ember now, but as part of the painting, a bright region within the fabric, glowing like a coal in the weave of a blanket. The canvas whispers with its own rhythm. The strokes are pulses, the colors are breaths, the shades are sighs. Together, they form a language that cannot be spoken, only felt, a language of expansion, without command of growth, without urgency. To listen is to hear the silence. To see is to glimpse the unseeable. To rest is to feel the canvas stretch around the soul. The Maori story of Tangaroa lingers a reminder that the sky itself is fluid, that even the greatest creatures leave trails of light behind them, trails that shimmer long after the body is gone. And in that reminder lies a truth that all motion leaves marks, that all growth paints strokes that nothing passes without adding to the picture. The canvas is not empty. It is full of presence, full of whispers, full of the traces of everything that has moved across it. The wanderer drifts still, and as it drifts, the canvas deepens its colors, seeping wider, its threads glowing longer, its silence humming stronger. The painting is not finished. It never will be. For the canvas is as endless as the night, and the night is as endless as breath. And so the picture expands, and so the silence holds, and so the glow spreads. The canvas of the night is painted without haste, without end, with colors drawn from the breath of stars and the passage of time. And in that painting, everything belongs, everything lingers, everything continues. Within the widening canvas, faint voices of light begin to gather, settling into the great hymn, as if they had always belonged. The wanderer drifts in silence, its robe breathing with colors spread across the night, and into that robe come sparks that were once apart, once fragile, once wandering alone. They do not vanish. They fold into the whole, their glow lingering, their presence softening into a pattern too broad to be undone. Each spark finds its place, not by command, not by haste, but by the gentle pull of balance that draws them toward harmony. It is as though an unseen choir were forming each star, a note, each note, a tone joining slowly, carefully, until the silence itself begins to hum. The older lights sound like deep instruments, steady and solemn, while the new ones arrive as gentle flutes, hesitant, yet clear, weaving brightness through the fabric of the hymn. There is no clash. There is only the merging of tones, the layering of voices, the endless widening of a song that never begins and never ends. The robe of the wanderer glimmers more fully now, for it carries within it the shimmer of many threads, each one a memory, each one a whisper, each one glowing not alone but together. The harmony deepens, and in that depth lies serenity, a stillness richer than silence itself. One can almost feel the breath of the stars, their rise and fall like the chest of a sleeper, steady, unhurried, eternal. The night accepts them all, the faint, and the bright, the strong, and the fragile. None are left behind. Each light is given space within the pattern, each voice a place within the hymn. Even the faintest spark, trembling at the edge of sight, is drawn inward, folded into the robe, remembered through its glow. The harmony does not exclude, it gathers, and through gathering, it grows. The wanderer continues clothed in this symphony of stars, moving without haste, breathing through its light, pulsing through its silence. Around it, the new stars shine, not as strangers, but as kin, their glow softened by the larger body, their voices woven into a chorus too vast to name. And as they shine, the song carries on, unbroken, unhurried, unfolding through the endless hush. It is a hymn written not in words, but in patience, a hymn carried not by sound, but by light. And in that hymn, every spark finds its place, every note finds its harmony, every breath becomes part of the whole. The robe glows, the silence listens, the harmony endures. As the chorus of new lights finds its place within the robe of the wanderer, the silence leans deeper, as if preparing to reveal the hidden rhythm beneath the glow. The night becomes not only a canvas, but also a score written in tones too slow to hear, where every star is a note, and every note is softened into breath. Within this score, the voices do not compete, nor do they rise above one another, but blend, surrendering their sharpness, until what remains is a single harmony stretched wide across the dark. It is a music without volume, a song without words, a hymn of stillness flowing through the endless hush. The Aztec once told of a fiery serpent sliding across the heavens, its body glowing with sparks, its trail leaving a luminous scar upon the night. That vision, fierce and radiant, becomes softened here, remembered not as terror, but as movement, a vast body weaving its way through the dark, each scale a note, each ripple a chord. The serpent becomes not a beast, but an instrument, its fire transmuted into light, its trail into melody. The harmony of the wanderer resembles this serpent's path. It coils and stretches, invisible, yet present, binding the stars in curves that seem still yet are always moving. The glow becomes a stream of music, too wide to hear flowing beneath silence, filling it without disturbing it. And through that stream, the robe of the wanderer shimmers, breathing, as though it held the very pulse of the night within. Every star becomes more than itself. It is no longer a single voice, but part of the larger song, part of the soft breath that spreads through the whole. The faintest spark contributes, the brightest note softens, until all are balanced, all are woven, all are settled into the hush. The night accepts them, and in acceptance, it becomes fuller, not louder, but deeper, as though silence itself had learned how to sing. The robe glows with this hidden music. Its shimmer is not steady, but pulsing like the rise and fall of breath, like the slow beating of a heart too vast to measure. Each pulse carries the memory of countless stars, each shimmer a whisper of union. The music holds no climax, no conclusion. It is continuous, a flow that circles back into itself, eternal and calm. And as the harmony spreads through the robe, the serpent's trail seems to linger, in memory a reminder that even fire can be softened, even chaos can be stilled, even the fiercest of movements can be folded into the hush. The sky remembers, and in remembering, it shapes the song, keeping its traces as threads within the larger weave. So the wanderer drifts clothed in harmony, breathing through silence, carrying the hymn of stars that never ends. The night listens, the stars shimmer, the music endures. As the hymn of harmony settles into the night, the silence shifts again, carrying with it the memory of countless threads, drawn into one, as though preparing to show how each joining becomes part of a greater design. The wanderer drifts in its patient path, and with every companion absorbed, its robe glows with a new shade, subtle yet lasting, as though another fragment of light had been pressed into a mosaic, too vast to complete. Each star, each faint ribbon, each soft spark, once alone, is now a piece of the whole, shaping the pattern, not through force, but through presence. The robe grows richer, not by brightness, but by depth, every hue layering upon the last, until the silence itself seems painted with shimmering fragments. It is a beauty that does not demand attention, for its strength lies in stillness, in the way small pieces settle into place, in the way they transform the whole without losing themselves. The mosaic breathes, each fragment glowing with its own memory, each one softened by the fabric that holds it. Together, they form an image that cannot be seen at once, only sensed, as though the night were slowly unfolding its hidden art. The Aztec spoke of a serpent of fire crossing the sky, its body scattering sparks that lingered as stars. And here too, one may imagine such sparks as pieces of a greater image, a serpent's trail transmuted into a tapestry, each scale a tile of light, each motion a stroke upon the dark. The wanderer gathers these scales, not to consume them, but to shape them into its endless robe, a living mosaic suspended in silence. From afar, the mosaic looks like a single glow, a steady presence drifting across the heavens. But to linger within it is to see its detail, the shimmer of one spark beside another, the faint scar of a ribbon stretched thin, the softness of light dissolving into shadow, Each piece holds a story. Each story dissolves into the whole, and the whole becomes a beauty, not of separation, but of unity. The silence deepens around this beauty. It accepts every fragment, faint or bright, polished or dim, and in accepting it, makes them equal, each one vital to the design. The robe does not distinguish between them. It holds them all, shaping from their presence a calm grandeur, a mosaic too subtle to finish, too endless to fade. And so the wanderer moves on, carrying its mosaic through the hush, glowing like an ancient lantern, breathing with every fragment it has received. The beauty of absorption is not in what is taken, but in what is shared, in the way the many become one, and the one becomes many again. The robe glimmers, the silence listens, the mosaic expands. As the mosaic of light expands within the robe of the wanderer, the silence bends once more, carrying the sense of something older, still as though beneath every shimmer there lingers a song that has been playing since the first hush of night. The stars breathe. Within this song, their glow rising and falling in unison, not hurried, not divided, but woven together into a hymn that has no beginning and no end. Each note is a pulse of light, each pause, a shadow, each chord, a harmony stretched wide across the black. It is not heard with ears, but felt through stillness, the way breath is felt in the chest or tied upon the shore. The hymn endures unbroken, echoing softly through silence. Among the Celts, there was a tale of a shining road, a band of light drawn across the heavens, guiding souls back to their home. It was said to be the path of return, a bridge of radiance for those who had wandered, a song written in the sky to remind them where to go. And so, the band of stars above became more than a shimmer. It became a hymn of belonging, a melody leading every spirit homeward. The wanderer carries this same hymn within its robe. Each absorbed spark, each folded ribbon of light, each faint ember dissolved into its glow, adds a new note to the chorus, a new memory to the song. The hymn is vast because it is layered, endless, because it never ceases beautiful, because it holds every voice, no matter how faint, no matter how brief. Through the hymn, silence itself becomes music. The glow of the robe shimmers like voices, blending like instruments tuned to the same breath. Some sing deep, low, and steady, while others ring soft and high, like whispers of silver above shadow. None overtake the others, for the song has no need of triumph. It is a music of equality, of surrender, of harmony that deepens through gentleness. The night holds this hymn with care. Its vastness does not scatter the notes, but gathers them, folding them into a resonance too large to break. The hymn flows within the stillness, subtle and serene, carrying the memory of the first light, carrying the promise of every return. It is an ancient hymn, yet it feels always present, as though each moment is both the first and the last verse. The robe glows, the hymn lingers, the silence listens, and in that listening, the night becomes more than shadow. It becomes a chorus, a path, a reminder. The hymn endures, guiding not only stars, but souls, a song from the beginning that will never cease. As the ancient hymn drifts through silence, the glow begins to loosen, spreading outward in threads, too delicate to see, as though the night itself were exhaling through unseen lips. The wanderer breathes, and with each breath its light extends, not in sudden beams, but in subtle veils that drift beyond its robe, dissolving into the dark like fragrance carried on a slow wind. The glow does not insist, does not command. It lingers, it softens, it moves, as though guided by no hand at all. What was once bound within the body now spreads through the silence quiet and unmeasured, so that even the farthest corners carry its trace. It is said in old tales of China that the heavens hold a river, a luminous stream of jade and silver flowing softly across the night. This celestial water was called the Heavenly River, and its course was imagined as the bridge between worlds, shimmering not with force but with purity. One may see this river again in the diffusion of the wanderer's glow, for it spreads not as flame, but as water flowing without sound, touching every shadow with the softness of light. The diffusion is not a scattering, but a sharing. Each particle of glow releases itself into the larger whole, no longer separate, no longer held, but dissolved into a fragrance of radiance. Like mist drifting through valleys, it touches without weight, lingers without boundary, and disappears, only to become part of something greater. The night accepts it, and in that acceptance, the silence deepens, the canvas expands, and the hymn becomes more than sound, it becomes presence. The robe of the wanderer shimmers with this diffusion. Its edges blur, its glow stretches its breath, mingles with the hush. Nothing is lost. Everything continues, though in forms too subtle to follow. The diffusion becomes a reminder that light is not held by boundaries, that beauty cannot be contained, that even the smallest breath leaves its trace upon the endless dark. Sometimes the diffusion feels like memory itself, faint, ungraspable, yet persistent, lingering, long after the source has passed. Other times, it feels like hope, like the promise that even in vast silence, something gentle endures, carried farther than thought can reach. Always it feels like a song, without words, drifting without end, as if the night itself were humming softly beneath its breath. The heavenly river flows, the mosaic expands, the hymn lingers, and through them all the diffusion carries the story onward, subtle and unseen, yet always there, woven into the fabric of the hush. The glow spreads, the silence breathes, the night remembers. As the unseen fragrance of light drifts through the silence, the night loosens again, and within its vastness appear faint seams, delicate as if stitched by an unsteady hand upon the dark. These seams are the long streams of stars, drawn thin across the black, the traces of wanderers that once moved through this hush. They are not sharp scars, but gentle lines, shimmering like silver threads stretched over ancient cloth. Each one is the memory of passage, a faint whisper left behind when a companion dissolved into the body of the greater nomad. The lines drift through the night without sound, and in their quiet presence lies a story of movement that has already ended and yet still lingers. The wanderer carries these lines like embroidery upon its robe. They are not mistakes, but embellishments, reminders of what has passed woven into the fabric by the slow hand of silence. Some stretch wide and long faint as mist, others curl and fold like strands of hair caught by an unseen breeze. All shimmer with the same subdued glow, neither strong nor weak, but steady like the memory of a voice echoing softly long after the words are gone. From afar, these seams appear like tears, as though the sky itself had been pulled apart and loosely mended with silver. Yet the tears do not suggest harm, only history. They are marks of journeys completed, of wanderers absorbed of movements, now written into stillness, like wrinkles upon water. They remain for a while, then fade, yet the memory of their pattern continues to hum within the robe. It is here that the old Egyptians spoke of a reflection, a river above the river, where the course of the Nile was mirrored in the heavens. The band of stars was said to be water, flowing not downward, but across the sky, carrying with it the spirits of the departed, carrying with it the memory of all things returned. The heavenly river was not only a guide, but also a reflection, showing that the heavens themselves remember the paths upon the earth. The streams of stars resemble this reflection, for they are like water flowing across the robe, faint currents of light carrying memory. They drift not with speed, but with patience. Their glow like drops, dissolving into a larger tide. Their course unhurried, their destination unknown. The robe accepts them, and in accepting it, remembered shaping from their flow a design too subtle to hold in thought, too soft to name aloud. One may imagine these lines as the sky's handwriting, faint letters across the black recording, not words, but gestures, the movement of one body into another. The letters are not sharp, not permanent, but fragile and fading, as though the ink were light itself, seeping into the fabric of night. And yet, even as they fade, their impression lingers, a reminder that no passage is lost, no motion without its trace. The wanderer glides on, carrying its robe of seams and threads, glowing like a tapestry, woven not in haste, but in endless patience. Each line is part of its beauty, each faint shimmer an ornament too delicate to touch. To gaze upon them is to see not emptiness, but memory, not absence, but presence transformed. They are the breath of the past, stretched thin across the silence, glowing softly as they dissolve into the whole. The heavenly river of the Egyptians lingers within this vision. Its waters, imagined as jade and silver, were thought to be eternal, carrying spirits homeward, carrying light backward into the night. In this way, the seams of stars become not only signs of absorption, but also currents of returned streams, where memory flows in reverse and carrying what was forward into the endless hush. The robe becomes both sky and river, both tapestry and water, both fabric and flow. To rest within this sight is to feel the hush deepen, for the seams do not shout their presence. They whisper, they linger, they dissolve, and in dissolving, they become part of the harmony, part of the hymn, part of the mosaic, already spread across the canvas. They are the subtle ornaments of silence, the faint notes that soften the music, the threads that complete the robe. Through them, the night teaches again that nothing is lost, not even the faintest trace. Every wanderer leaves a mark. Every mark becomes part of the whole, and the whole becomes more beautiful for carrying so many histories within. The tears are not wounds, but veins of light, and within them flows the memory of what has passed, unbroken, unforgotten, unending. The robe glows, the seams shimmer, the river flows, and within the silence, the memory of light endures, fragile yet eternal, faint, yet endless, like water running backward into the night. As the faint seams dissolve into the robe of night, the silence carries them onward until they seem less like scars and more like pages bound into a book too vast to close. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like such a book, every star, a letter, every cluster, a sentence, every ribbon of glow, a paragraph unfolding across the dark. To gaze upon it is to open that book, to let the eyes wander through the chapters of light, each one a record of passage, each one a memory set into place. The river of stars becomes not only a path, but also a library, a stream of memory flowing through silence, turning each spark into a page of recollection. The river remembers without speaking. Its language is light, its script, the faint shimmer of stars pressed against shadow. Each spark tells a story, though the stories are not separate. They bleed into one another, forming a text that has no margins, a narrative without beginning, without end. To rest beneath it is to read without reading, to sense the hum of memory passing over, to feel the weight of ages softened into glow. Within this river, the wanderer drifts its robe, swelling with every fragment absorbed. The fragments are not erased, but recorded, their light set into the flow, like ink into parchment. The robe becomes richer, not only with color, but with history, every seam and scar transformed into remembrance. It is a river with memory, a book that writes itself endlessly, every page, alive, every letter, burning with a glow too soft to fade. Old voices whispered of such rivers. The Egyptians looked upward and saw a reflection of their Nile flowing backward into the heavens, carrying the stories of their people. Others spoke of paths for souls, bridges for spirits, ways for wanderers to return. And in each telling, the river was not only a crossing, but a remembrance, a vessel that carried what once was, holding it gently within its glow. The Milky Way is such a vessel. Its current is made of light, but beneath the light runs memory drawn out into lines, folded into clusters, breathed into silence. The river does not forget. It drifts onward, steady and calm, recording, without pen storing, without weight, remembering, without voice. And in its memory lies its beauty, for what could be more serene than a book that is never closed, a story that is never lost. The night listens as the river flows, and through that listening it echoes. The echoes are faint, like voices heard deep in a forest, like songs carried through trees long after the singer has passed. Around the wanderer, beyond its robe of shimmering fragments, still more lights hover, distant, hesitant, waiting to be drawn inward. They glimmer faintly, not yet woven, not yet recorded, but lingering at the edge, like echoes of a story waiting to be written. These echoes are not emptiness. They are sparks in the waiting voices in the distance, presences that will one day be drawn into the river, folded into its book. They shimmer like campfires, glimpsed from afar, small flames dotting the horizon of silence. And it is told among nomadic peoples that such lights are the fires of gods set along the edge of the world, to guide, to warm, to remind, each one a beacon, each one an echo, each one waiting to be embraced. The robe of the wanderer hums with this promise. It is full, yet it is never complete. It remembers, yet it always leaves room for more. The river of memory does not overflow, for memory itself is endless as silence, as endless as the night that holds it. The echoes linger around its edges, calling softly, shimmering, faintly, waiting for the moment when they too will be absorbed, when their glow will find its place upon the page. One may imagine the robe as a forest, at night filled with echoes that drift through its trees. Each echo is a promise, each glimmer, a voice, each faint light, a memory, not yet recorded. They are not lost. They are simply waiting, singing quietly in the distance, preparing to join the hymn, preparing to find their page within the river's book. The wanderer drifts on its robe, glowing with memory, its silence breathing with echoes. It does not rush to gather them. It waits. It listens. It carries the river forward, letting the distant lights shimmer in their time, letting the echoes call until the moment arrives when they too will be part of the whole. The patience of the wanderer is infinite, and through that patience, the story continues, layer upon layer, memory upon memory. The river flows, the book writes, the echoes linger, and through them all the silence hums, with remembrance carrying every fragment, every spark, every whisper into the unending hush. As the river of memory drifts onward and the echoes fade into their quiet horizon, the vast robe of stars seems to pause as though it has reached a breath held between one journey and the next. The Milky Way rests upon the sky. Like a sigh, its light softened into calm, its motion hushed into silence. What had been a current flowing with memory now lingers as a pool, a wide stillness spread across the dark, where the shimmer does not hurry, and the glow leans gently against shadow. It is not an ending, nor a beginning, but a moment of suspension, a space between heartbeats, a silence that deepens the night. Within this pause, every star seems closer, their faint sparks breathing in unison, their quiet forming a hymn too soft to rise above the silence. The night folds around them like a cloak, and the galaxy settles as though listening to its own hush. The stillness is not emptiness, but fullness, like the calm before a tide, like the air just before dawn, like the hush that comes when the world inhales and waits. Through this calm, the Milky Way feels like a breath, drawn deep, long and slow, as though it prepares itself for a journey yet unseen. Its arms are relaxed, its currents subdued, its robe of fragments gathered close while the darkness holds it steady. The stars do not press forward, the light does not scatter, the silence becomes a vessel in which all motion rests. And in that vessel, time itself seems to lean back, softened into quiet. The stillness speaks in ways no voice can. It hums without sound. It glows without movement. It holds without grasping. It is the pause that allows the story to continue, the hush that makes the song whole, the breath that carries both past and future. To lie beneath it is to feel oneself drifting into the same rhythm, chest rising slowly, falling slowly, thoughts dissolving like sparks into water. The body softens, the mind loosens, the heart listens, and all is calm. The robe of the wanderer does not vanish. It waits. The river of stars does not dry. It lingers. The echoes do not fade. They rest in the hush. All is present. All is whole. All is still. And in this stillness, beauty grows deeper, for beauty does not always shine in motion, but often in the space where motion holds its breath. The Milky Way lies across the sky like a sleeper wrapped in its own quiet glow, gathering its strength in silence, waiting for the gentle stir that will carry it onward once more. And through that, waiting, the night breathes, with its soft and unbroken, carrying the hush into the endless dark, until the stillness itself becomes the next step, the quiet bridge into what will follow. The quiet pause deepens, and from its stillness, a larger silence unfolds, as though the night itself stretches into a sea without shore, a boundless expanse where light drifts like foam upon invisible waves. The universe lies open vast, and hushed its spaces endless and unbroken, its calm spreading like water. that has forgotten the sound of its own motion. To gaze into it is to feel the weight of immensity and the gentleness of nothingness, woven together, carrying the listener further into rest. This silence is not emptiness, but a fullness too large for words. A vast body breathing slowly, softly, its rhythm echoing in the pulse of distant suns. The stars scatter across the darkness, like whispers scattered by wind, their glow tender against the immense hush, each shimmer no louder than the quiet beat of a heart. The universe does not rush, it does not strain, it holds itself in balance, still as the surface of a dark sea beneath the moon. Through this vastness, one feels both very small and deeply included, as though each spark of light rests within the same breath that carries the galaxies, as though every soul listening is a note within a cosmic chord sustained across immeasurable silence. The quiet deepens, and yet within it, something moves. A presence drifts, subtle as a shadow, soft as a dream. The nomad continues. He does not carry a name nor a voice, only a shape draped in light, a silhouette walking endlessly across the dark expanse. His steps do not disturb the silence, they fold into it, like ripples dissolving in still water. His robe shimmers as though woven from the very fabric of the Milky Way, a mantle of brightness stitched with sparks gliding softly with every step. He is never hurried, never weary, and his journey has no end, for the path itself is his dwelling. In the stories of the highlands told beneath the Ethiopian sky, this shining road is said to be the passage for travelers who cannot stop, whose spirit belongs to the journey rather than the home. They wander not to arrive, but to remain within the motion of stars carried endlessly toward horizons that never close. The Milky Way, then, is not only a river of light, but a road of the eternal nomad, the path of those who walk beyond the edges of earth. Imagine him moving far above his form, both solitary and accompanied by the quiet host of stars. He is not lonely, for the silence walks with him, and the vastness listens to his steps. He does not speak yet. Every glimmer of light he passes becomes his word, every faint shimmer his song. His path is long, but in the universe there is no measure of long, only continuity, only flow. He continues as the universe breathes, as the silence expands. Around him the galaxies lean outward like ancient listeners, their spirals patient, their glow subdued. They do not call him to stop, they only open the way, spreading their arms like forests, parting for a river. The stars do not resist him, the dark does not hinder him, the hush itself carries him forward. And so, he becomes less a figure and more a rhythm, less a traveler and more a pulse within the greater stillness. The story of the nomad does not belong to a single place, for every horizon bears it. His cloak of brightness spills into the night sky, and those who rest beneath it feel his steps without knowing. In the hush of evening, fires in the soft songs carried by wind in the still moments. Between dreams, his journey passes like a faint glimmer across the inner eye. The silence of the universe is not only outside, it becomes within, where the wandering light moves through memory and breath. The ocean of night opens around him like a canvas, and on that canvas his passage writes no lines, but a slow glow, a trail like silver thread sewn gently through the dark cloth. The thread does not end, it only curves, stretching further, merging into the wider weave of light. Those who look up and trace the line see not only a galaxy, but the echo of a figure always receding, always approaching, always moving on. The silence that surrounds him is soft, never heavy. It lulls rather than presses it, soothes rather than stills. It is the kind of silence one meets in dreams, when the body loosens and the breath deepens, when thought thins into murmurs and drifts away. The universe carries such silence, not as absence, but as presence, a presence that fills and heals, a presence that cradles every star and every soul alike. The nomad is its witness, his journey is its hymn. As he moves, he reminds the universe of its own continuity, of the fact that motion can be gentle, that time can be soft, that distance can be held without urgency. And so through him, silence is revealed, not as stillness alone, but as the flow that continues quietly, endlessly, like a river beneath ice, like a song hummed beyond hearing. One might imagine that if the universe could speak, it would sound like his steps, faint and steady, endless and soft. But the universe does not need to speak, for it is heard in the hush itself, in the calm that spreads through all things when they surrender to the night. The silence of the cosmos is a balm, and the nomad is its bearer, carrying it onward, weaving it into every horizon. The path stretches beyond sight, and still he moves his light, not fading, but flowing. The hush grows deeper, the night grows wider, and yet within it, all becomes more intimate, as though the listener has been drawn into the robe of the traveler himself, sheltered by the brightness of his steps. There is no hurry to follow, no need to keep pace, only the awareness that his journey is endless, and in that endlessness lies peace. Thus, the silent universe holds its breath, and within that breath, the nomad walks, and within his walking, the stars rest, and within their resting, the listener drifts. The silence becomes sleep, the journey becomes dream, and the dream becomes part of the great, unbroken path that carries everything onward, softly without end. The silence that had stretched wide before now softens further, and within its depth, there begins a quiet movement, like the pulse of water deep beneath stone, steady, unseen, yet always flowing. It is not a beginning and not an ending, but the recognition that what drifts here does so in a circle without closure, a river that never surrenders its source, that carries itself forward and yet always returns. The Milky Way is such a river, a current without shore, a stream of light threading the dark fabric of night, never ceasing, never fading, only folding back into itself in an eternal embrace. To follow this current is to be carried slowly and gently into the sense that all things merge and dissolve and rise again. Stars are gathered into it like droplets, and galaxies lean into it like branches bent toward water, and every glimmer it collects becomes another note in a song without a final chord. The current whispers of the endlessness of being, of how no star is lost when it falls, no light extinguished when it fades, for every spark is carried onward, mingling with the flow, joining the cycle that has no conclusion. The endless current feels as soft as breath, as constant as heartbeats. It does not rush, it does not strain it, holds within itself the memory of every star it has ever carried, and the promise of every star yet to be born. Its waters are not wet, but woven from light and shadow, and in drifting through them, one does not sink, but floats, buoyed by stillness, cradled by immensity. This is the river that never empties, the river whose banks are the edges of time, the river that flows even when there is no witness to watch it. And in the quiet turning of this current, there is another union, one more subtle than the gathering of stars. It is the union of light and dark, the slow blending of brilliance into shade, the dissolving of radiance into quiet shadow, so that no boundary remains, no line can be traced. The stars shimmer like dust caught on the breath of wind, and that dust scatters into night, dissolving, vanishing yet remaining, present in the air. Light becomes shadow, and shadow becomes light, a mingling that carries no struggle, no contrast, only a gentle blending as two threads woven into one fabric. Light drifts like seeds, and shadow holds them like soil. Together, they breathe together, they spread, and the current carries them, both with equal gentleness. One cannot be without the other, and their harmony is not born from balance, but from inseparability, as though they were the same presence seen in two forms. To walk beneath the Milky Way is to stand in this blending, to be wrapped in its hush, to feel the way the darkness holds the stars, and the stars soften the darkness. This union is like dust, dissolving in the breath of night, scattering too fine to grasp, too soft to notice, and yet it fills everything. It colors the very silence. It is not sharp, not sudden. It is as if one were watching a river reflect the dusk, and the sky itself forgot where the last glow ended and where the first shadow began. All becomes one stream, one current, one hush. The stories carried by elders long before us often told of rivers that could never dry waters, that carried the memories of all who touched them. The sky's river is such a story written in stars, an unbroken telling that has no beginning and no last line. Those who looked upward saw their ancestors' passage, their children's promise, their own small place adrift in the wide current, and they knew that even silence had a voice. The Milky Way spoke through the ceaseless motion that could be seen but never touched, known but never held. So it moves, and so it rests, both together, the endless flow and the unshaken calm, and within its soft embrace, every glimmer, every breath, every gaze that drifts skyward becomes part of the same thread. The current does not end, and it does not pause. It only folds inward and outward, like tides breathing in slow rhythm, like lungs expanding in sleep. To imagine oneself within this current is to feel lighter, slower, less bound by measure, more attuned to the rhythm that lies beneath all rhythms. For the endless river is not simply above, but within, streaming through thought, carrying memory, and dream guiding them toward the wider hush. Sleep itself is a form of entering this current, a surrender to the flow that carries us into places unmeasured beyond the reach of clocks or walls. And when one rests in this hush, the blending of light and shadow becomes clearer. The stars are seen less as burning fires, more as quiet motes, drifting, and the dark is not absence, but presence holding them in its arms. The listener feels less the edge between self and cosmos, and more the merging, as though breath itself were drawn from the same hush that moves through galaxies. The current is endless, the blending eternal, and one's own being is part of that continuity. Through every still night, through every soft gaze, through every closed eye, drifting into rest, the river continues, and within it, light and shadow dissolve into one another endlessly softly, like whispers folding back into silence, and the silence too flows on, carrying the listener deeper into rest, deeper into the sense that no ending is final, no darkness, empty, no light isolated. Everything flows, everything returns, everything rests. The hush that had carried the listener through rivers of light and shadows of silence now softens again, as though the universe itself leans closer and lets out a long, slow breath. What once seemed to move outward, flowing endlessly into the dark, now gathers back, folding upon itself, returning to a state not of ending, but of stillness, like the surface of a lake when the ripples fade and only the reflection of the sky remains. The Milky Way rests here quiet as a whisper stretched across the heavens, steady and unbroken, as if it had always been waiting in this place of calm. This stillness is not absence and not silence without shape. It is a presence tender and deep woven with the memory of every star, every drift of light, every trace of motion that has passed. Within it lies the soft afterglow of the stories told by galaxies, the hushed echoes of distant myths, the shimmer of paths once crossed and journeys once begun. It is stillness that holds within itself the movement of ages, much as night holds within itself the faint warmth of vanished suns. The Milky Way, stretched wide above, breathes like a living body in sleep. Each strand of starlight is a sigh, each shadow, a pause, each faint shimmer, a heartbeat settling into rhythm. And within this breathing silence, the listener too finds the body slowing the breath, deepening the heart, folding into the same unhurried cadence. Stillness becomes not something looked upon, but something shared, as though the listener has drifted into the same breath that holds the galaxy. The return to stillness feels as though one has stepped into an ancient chamber where the walls are woven from night and the ceiling is the dome of stars. Nothing moves here, and yet everything waits suspended in a kind of eternal patience. The river of light that once stretched forward now seems to rest its motion, hidden its flow unseen like water, deep beneath the earth that continues, yet makes no sound. The listener feels the weight of this hush, but it is a weight that comforts, that presses gently, like a blanket upon the body at rest. And so, in this quiet, the stars themselves seem softer, as if their edges have blurred, as if their brightness has melted into the dark. They no longer burn. They glow steady and subdued, breathing in harmony with the shadow that surrounds them. This blending creates a vision that does not dazzle, but soothes, a vision in which light no longer seeks to be separate, but has become part of the hush. The sky is no longer scattered with sparks, but woven into a fabric of silver threads, lying upon velvet, unmoving, eternal. One might imagine the Milky Way here as a long exhalation stretched across night. It is the sigh of an ancient traveler, the murmur of a dream that has never ended, the voice of silence speaking softly through light. It is endless, but it feels close, intimate, surrounding the listener, as though each star were placed to hold them in calm. The stillness of the galaxy is not far away, not distant, but folded into the same space as the breath drawn by the listener. The myths of old often spoke of stillness not as the absence of life, but as the place where life gathers strength for its next journey. They saw quiet as the womb of movement, the pause that allows the next step to be taken. So too does the Milky Way rest, now gathering within its silent expanse the glow of countless stars, the memory of countless tides, the whisper of countless breaths, until the time comes to release them again into the flow. In this moment, however, it holds them all softly, like seeds within soil, like embers waiting within ash. Stillness is not an ending, it is a return, a circling back, a folding inward, a recognition of what has always been. And in that return, there is comfort, for nothing is lost, and nothing is hurried, and all things are allowed to be what they are without demand. The listener drifting in this hush feels themselves dissolve into the same pattern, no longer separate from the galaxy above, but held within its breath, part of its whisper, a note within its long unbroken hymn. And within this stillness, time loosens its grip. Moments blur into one another, minutes become indistinguishable from hours, and the only rhythm that remains is the gentle rise and fall of breath, the soft pulse of light through shadow. The galaxy teaches not with words, but with presence, that rest is not a pause from being, but a form of being itself. Rest is as vast as movement, as infinite as time, as sacred as light. The Milky Way lingers here, quiet, unmoving, yet alive with a memory of everything it has held and everything it has carried. Its stillness is the stillness of deep water, of dark forest, of quiet dawn before the first bird sings. It is the stillness that precedes motion, but also the stillness that exists for its own sake, without need for anything to follow. And in that stillness, the listener too finds peace, as though they were not simply watching the galaxy, but resting within it. It may feel as though the stars themselves breathe, with the listener rising and falling, with each inhalation sinking and settling, with each exhalation. The night grows wide, the shadows soften, and everything folds into one shared hush. The Milky Way, the body, the breath, the silence, all are woven together in the same still rhythm. And that rhythm has no beginning, no end, only continuity, only return, only stillness. Even as dreams approach, even as thoughts dissolve, the galaxy holds its quiet vigil. It does not call attention, it does not demand it, only rests luminous and subdued, whispering through light the eternal song of calm. It is a reminder that stillness is not nothingness, but fullness, that within quiet lies depth, and within silence lies presence. The Milky Way breathes through the night, and the listener breathes with it, folded into its vast, unbroken stillness. And so, the return is complete, not as a conclusion, but as a homecoming, for all journeys of light and shadow, of sound and silence, of myth and truth. Circle back to this, the stillness that holds them, the breath that sustains them, the whisper that has no end. The Milky Way lies above, quiet as ever, radiant, yet subdued, like a voice singing softly beneath the threshold of hearing, endless, eternal, always here. And the listener rests within that voice, carried into sleep, carried into peace, carried into the quiet embrace of the universe itself.